Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Ozcast.
Hello, Nest listeners. It's time for another State of the Union address. We've delivered more of these, Drew Jones, than Ronald Reagan, I reckon. But that's the way of it at the West Coast Eagles at the moment, of course. And it's certainly fitting after. Well, let's get straight to it, mate. The worst on-field loss in the history of the West Coast Eagles in the midst of the worst on-field moments in the club's history as well.
Hey, Garby. Yeah, it's bloody hell. It's tough coming and fronting up again. We've lost 33 of our last 36 games. It's the record is quite staggering, and it's a lot harder to front up and talk about these losses when it's so non-competitive. So certainly the worst on-field performance in the club's history. Whether it's the darkest day in the club's history, I would say still the Ben Cousins, such is life day. I think still the worst for me. How did you feel?
Yeah, I mean, weighed up either way. Like, that era was obviously dark for the club, but the team was successful on the field. I think about 1989. You look back there, I mean, obviously a long time ago, and we were too young to fully go through all that in detail. But, you hear stories about the club being on the brink of folding and not sure if they'd get through it. Very early days, of course. So the on-field stuff you don't take as seriously because they were in their infancy. But, the reports of the club potentially folding obviously mean that it was a significant time. The Ken Judge years were pretty dark, but they didn't last for long. It was two bad seasons or one terrible season, and then Woosha came in and up the ladder the Eagles went. So this has lingered for a while now. 2 full seasons of being an embarrassment and being a complete rabble off the field. I think that's the aspect of it that's really tough for a lot of fans to take, is that the Eagles used to be the trendsetters off the field, the head of the game. I used to always sort of look at other clubs thinking, yeah, we've got your measure in terms of the way we're doing things off the field. Now we're clearly not, because of the injuries, of course, which need to be investigated. And then the questions over whether, people have been in positions for far too long. The coach, the captain, the CEO, other support staff, have they just become too loyal to people who are potentially outdated? That's a big question mark, which is never something you asked about the Eagles before.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the loyalty. I can deal with that. Maybe some of those people that you've mentioned in those positions have been around for too long and you become sort of institutionalised and a bit stale. I think if you describe West Coast right now as a stale football club, I think that's fair analysis. But at least we're not Carlton, who's sacking their coaches and, constantly. Sure. But we've sacked essentially three coaches in our history. John Worsfold was as mutual-ish, maybe a sacking, but then the 2 ones early and then Ken Judge. We don't just, throw coaches out and we don't panic as a football club. So I like that is a part of our history, but clearly at the moment, football club's stale, and I think they've made some decisions at the top of the club and through some of the football department management that have been mistakes. And that's what leads to, 36 losses of our last 41. So 24 of our losses, Garby, in this period, dating back to that back end of the 2021 season, have been more than 30 points. If some of those games maybe were competitive, but the majority of them probably weren't. So that's more than half the time we roll out, we are completely non-competitive. And then there are stretches where we've lost 7 or 8 games in a row by more than 5 goals with some absolute hidings in there. So that, to me, that suggests, obviously there's some stuff going on with injuries and other things that are outside of our control and are unprecedented. But I think we have to acknowledge there has to be some sort of change. Just the question is, what is that change?
Yeah, well, it's been going on for so long. Like, we've had these discussions for over 12 months. It's amazing that they are remaining so calm in the context of all of this. You do have to ask if Adam Simpson is at breaking point personally, whether he can keep doing it. It seems like he can. You know, you listen to the chairman, Paul Fitzpatrick and Trevor Nisbet, Luke Shuey yesterday who spoke, and they are remaining stoic in their response to all of this, and they are adamant they will get through it, but they've been saying that for 12 months. And obviously injuries are a massive part of the conversation. They can't be left out of it. I was impressed that Adam Simpson didn't touch on them in his press conference. I think that was deliberate. He said, I'm not going to give the players an out here. I think, you know, the injuries are a huge part of it, but I'm not going to say it in the wake of that because it's still not good enough to lose to Hawthorn by that amount. And we'll discuss things in regards to the coach. We'll discuss the number one draft pick if we get it, what the Eagles should do with that. Massive talking points around the club right now. But this calmness that they're presenting, yes, at times it's reassuring. Again, you talk about Carlton. I'm laughing at them at the moment. Like they've just lost to the two flag favourites and their president's out doing doorstop interviews about the coach's future. I'm like, what are you doing? You're just drawing more attention to yourself. You could win two of the next three games and you're in the 8 just about and you're going okay. Keep calm. We are doing that, but we're a shambles and an embarrassment. And you ask, should there be more of a reaction to all of this? Should there be a coaching change? Should there be scalps being made? Should Luke Shuey be saying, I'm going to stand down as captain? All these sorts of things. I'm not saying any of those should happen, but I wonder if we're being a little bit too calm, or whether we're going to look back in a month and go, wow, my goodness. Thankfully, we've got people with a level head because now the players are coming back and we're starting to play some nice football and we can see things building in the future. It's hard to know at the moment.
Yeah, so I think some of the criticism last season was deserved, and some of the criticism now is deserved as well, Garby. There's no doubt about that. But there have been mitigating circumstances to all this. Obviously, COVID was something that we hadn't seen before, and the club was affected in a way that no other team in the AFL was. So you have to sort of give a club an out when it comes to COVID. It still led to a catastrophic season in terms of, 2 wins and 20 losses. And then I thought we were average. We had played one bad quarter against North Melbourne in round 1, who had a bit of a sugar hit from Alistair Clarkson. Like if round 1 West Coast played against round 6 North Melbourne, we would have won that game. But they just had this Clarkson, good feel-good vibes, fit team, Harry Sheasel on debut, blah, blah, blah. We lose that game by a kick. Played really well against GWS in round 2, deserved to win that game. GWS aren't a bad team, despite their spot on the ladder. And then halfway through the Western Derby, we were playing really well, but we had 4 catastrophic injuries in 1 quarter, essentially, and they were key players. Liam Ryan, Premiership hero. Jeremy McGovern, Premiership hero. Captain does his hamstring. We lost Witherden to concussion. Chester hurt his knee, blah, blah, blah. We all know that. And then we played competitively for a few weeks, and then we've been terrible for the last few. So as much as, outsiders will hit the panic button, Garby, and Damien Barrett will take his shots and Kane Corn will take his shots and say we're arrogant. You've listened to some of the measured opinions. I think Jerry Waitley and David King have been pretty good on this. And then we know the club inside out. Yeah. We know that it was competitive early. So West Coast right now are acting like probably we are. They're thinking, all right, first 3 rounds we were okay. Yeah. And we were competitive despite injuries. Now the wheels have fallen off. But there are mitigating circumstances. So the team unavailable against Hawthorn on the weekend, I'll name it in terms of as if you were naming a squad. Yeah. So you've got Barras at fullback, Shannon Hearn, Tom Cole. You've got Jermaine Jones, who's now injured but did play on the weekend but only played half a game. Jeremy McGovern at centre-half back. Let's throw Yo to the half-back flank. We can chuck Luke Edwards on a wing, Jock Cully on a wing. We've got Shuey through the midfield, Nick Nat in the ruck. Got Kobe Bergil running around. Sam Petruski-Seaton, Jack Darling, Jamie Cripps, Isaiah Winder. And then now Allen is in doubt for this week with a knee. Liam Ryan didn't play. But there's essentially an entire team. So We've never seen that before. So, yes, it was a record loss.
Yeah.
Second worst in history to the team on the bottom of the ladder. But that was barely a second string side on the park on the weekend.
Yeah. And there's another angle to that, in that some of the players who played shouldn't have played. So I'd say Rhett Bazzo, Noah Long, Campbell Chesser, Harry Edwards, Brady Hoff shouldn't have played, because they are youngsters coming back from injury who have been thrown in when they're not ready, be it with fitness, form, confidence. You could argue as well that Andrew Gaff shouldn't be playing at the moment. He's clearly banged up. We know he's been struggling for a while. We've been at the forefront of that. But he started the season okay, and he's clearly needed a rest over the last few weeks, because he's just a complete passenger out there at the moment, and he's needed to be rotated, but we can't afford to do it. You could arguably say the same for Bailey Williams, who's going pretty well, but you can tell he's banged up too, and has needed a rest at some stage, and the club just can't afford to give him one. So there's a good 6 or 7 players who shouldn't be in the team, Drew, but we've got no choice. So that makes it worse. That being said, they gave up on the weekend against a team that's bang average as well, like close to a VFL side on paper in Hawthorn. And that was the disappointing aspect. Like, to lose by 40, 50 points, okay, you can take that considering the injuries, not by 116 to them.
Can we allow them the excuse of being human in terms of the giving up factor?
No, I don't think you can ever give up in AFL football. I just don't think you can. Like, it's just a non-negotiable. Of course it happens, but that can't ever be excused. It just can't. Like, I get it. The fitness is not there, and so some players just can't go. But the club means too much to too many people, and you are too privileged to be wearing that Guernsey to ever stop. Of course, it's going to happen, but I'm not giving them an out on that.
And Simmo talked about it yesterday in the sponsored segment when he does with Will Schofield, that they started the game a certain way, they were getting opened up, and then they thought, okay, let's just try and keep the ball a little bit more. Let's make our ball movement more conservative and just try and protect the scoreboard a bit.
Yeah.
And then that was going badly. So in the last quarter, they decided, all right, let's play a bit more attacking footy. And then they gave up goals from turnovers quickly, and then the players went back into their shells. So the perfect storm of lack of availability, playing poorly away from home, losses are building up, 33 of the last 36. That's got to have some sort of mental toll. Loss after loss after loss after loss after loss.
Oh, of course.
And then throw in complete breakdown of confidence and game plan. Like, it doesn't get worse than that. And normally that, what I just described, that is a recipe for a coach sacking.
Yeah.
But there are these mitigating circumstances. So as bad as the players were, and I think giving up is a strong word, I think that there has never been a West Coast Eagles football team that has run out onto the field that has been positioned in a worse way to compete in a football game.
No doubt.
So Garby, let me throw some scenarios at you. Just to get this out of the way, you and I both believe there is no way that Adam Simpson will be sacked. Yes or no?
No, I don't believe there's no way. No. I mean, if these performances and these results keep happening over the next 2-3 weeks, there has to be a change. Like, I get the argument against that. What's the point with so many injuries and where the list is right now? I get that. But if you keep losing over 100 points every week, voice has grown tired and the players are not inspired, then you have to make a change.
So let's say the Eagles lose by 100 to Essendon this week, and then we get a couple of other big beltings. Does Simmo walk?
Potentially, yeah. It might get to the stage where he realises, like, I've got no more levers to pull. Like, there's nothing I can say anymore or do that will change this. It needs someone else to come in and do it. That might happen. It also comes down to which players return. Like, over the next month, you might get Yo, Hearn, and one or two others back. And if things don't improve, well, then, the club has to make that call. It could happen either way like that. The club's got to be looking into this, and you don't want to go behind a coach's back, but investigating, are the players still motivated by him or not? You have to go about that in a tactful way to find that out. Trevor Nisbet and Adam Simpson are very close, and that's great, but you can't be too loyal right now. You've got to make an objective call on this. And if the players are motivated, Luke Shuey said yesterday, we are behind the coach as much as we've ever been. We are so driven together. If that's accurate and the CEO and the board believes that, then fine. But if they believe there are actual fractures there, it's very hard to come back from that. So then you might have to make a change if the results aren't improving. All these things are up in the air right now. And yes, one of the scenarios, Drew, is that he could walk because it becomes too much to bear. I don't think he's thinking about his future coaching prospects or anything like that, but it can be hard to handle. That being said, he's also set up in WA now, built a new house, which he's been open about, and it's all very comfortable for him. There's a personal side of it that makes it hard to leave as well, I'd imagine, kids in school and so on.
I just think that there is a chance that over the next 3 weeks in games against Essendon, Collingwood, and then Adelaide, there's a chance that we cop 3 absolute hidings. And I would hate to see the club back themselves into a corner over the next 3 weeks when in 6 weeks' time there could be 8, best 22 players back in the team. It's almost like you need to send Simmo on a holiday for 4 weeks, give the team to Matthew Knights and say, we'll see you in 4 weeks. But that honestly would be the best possible thing. Send Simmo to Europe and go, we understand the next 4 weeks is going to be difficult. We've only got young players who aren't ready and a few senior core players. We've got guys coming back from injury. Like Luke Shuey is going to come back from injury in 2 weeks. Is he going to shoot the lights out? Probably not. Might do another hamstring because he's come back a week early because the club is literally on its knees. McGovern's going to come back from a serious hamstring tendon injury. Is he going to be ready to go? No way. He can't. He probably can barely run. But McGovern wants to be out there. He wants to help. Liam Ryan's a week or two ahead of schedule, but he's not going to be able to do what he normally does. If we are going to sit here and say that if these results continue, then Simmo's got to go, then Simmo may have to go because I just can't see us quickly being able to turn this around. So either we've got to batten down the hatches and accept that this is the most catastrophic injury situation that's ever hit a football club and come what may, or we have to accept that Simmo is going to cop a few more hidings and may have to leave because it's going to potentially repeat itself.
Yeah, well, the way the club's talking at the moment, you just don't know. And it could be any of those scenarios. I mean, it may become too much to bear and they make a change, or he might decide, I can't handle this anymore and it's not good for me. You've just seen Damien Hardwick say it's becoming just brutal mentally being an AFL coach. He might come to that conclusion. Or they might realise that there has to be a change. We just don't know at the moment because of his contract situation and how loyal the club have been vocally for him and because of the injury situation as well. There have been a couple of positives, Drewy, like Dom Sheed played really nicely on the weekend. We've spoken about Bailey Williams this season. Don't mind Alex Witherden and what he's trying to do. Luke Foley's been pretty good, hasn't he? He's one who stood up down back.
Yeah, I've liked some of those medium tier players when they got that opportunity to try and shine. They've held up okay. Luke Foley's actually fit, he's and he's available, and he needs to show something if he wants to be in the team moving forward. So, he's been all right. Is there anyone else that has held up their end of the bargain? Bailey Williams, I think, has been good.
Yeah, Xavier O'Neill's doing well as a tagger. His disposal's an issue. But he's tagging well. I like him in the team at the moment. We could do a lot. If he gets dropped at the moment, it's just it'll be ridiculous because the personnel. And yeah, his disposal's not great, but I'd rather have someone who's energetic and can lock down on someone. So yeah, I'm liking what he's doing. There aren't too many others. We know Tim Kelly's having a pretty good season, but it's tough for him at the moment. Traden Hunt's been solid. Waterman's trying hard. Petrocelli's trying to give us something. Plenty of trying, but it's very difficult. There are some youngsters who you're asking questions of, but I think it's mainly just due to their lack of conditioning and fitness. Harry Edwards and Campbell Chesser are probably the main two. We know have talent. We've seen it from Harry Edwards before, and Campbell Chesser's a first-round draft pick, but they're just being thrown in without form behind them and without fitness behind them, and they're being exposed, and you worry about their confidence a little bit, but they'll probably be better in the long run. But yeah, there's big question marks about how good they'll be now because they're just looking way off the pace. But there are serious mitigating circumstances in regards to both Harry Edwards and Campbell Chesser.
Yeah, Chesser was someone I've been thinking about a bit. Do you think we just have to try to not judge him right now? Because at the moment, he looks like a massive bust. Yeah.
You have to try. But you have to also remember that he hasn't played a lot of football all up. Like, it's not just this season. It's last season. It's the year before. But the question you have to ask is, did they recruit very early an injury-prone player? So that's the only question I'm asking. Not is there talent there. I think that there has to be. It's whether he's got issues with his body overall, which some players just do. And if that's the case, then yeah, we've made a blunder.
Yeah, well, the start of his career injury-wise it's not totally dissimilar to the start of Luke Shuey's. But Chess has actually been able to get a couple of games in early, whereas Luke didn't play for his first 2 or 3 seasons at West Coast. So I'm not going to tip him out at this stage. Similar situation, young Victorian kid brought over and injured a lot early. He may well turn out to be a good player. I mean, Shuey's turned out to be a Norm Smith medal winner and captain of the club. So there's no reason to give up. And I looked back at that draft today, Garby, and we could have got Ben Hobbs if we hadn't have traded that pick with Port Adelaide, who took Sin. And Hobbs has looked good the last couple of weeks, and he was a Bendigo boy, so he would have been moving regardless, moving to Melbourne or moving to Perth. But other than that, when you look down the list of players, it's a pretty weak draft outside of the top 10. So I'm not going to sit here and say, we could have had 5 or 10 better players. It's too early to tell, and I feel sorry for him. He just needs some time in a competitive waffle team to get some reps, play the occasional game with some senior players, which he's just not been given that opportunity. So just quickly, Garby, how concerned are you about the results at the moment, where we've spent a lot of time talking about this list build? So, Devin Robertson, I feel like he'd be a great pickup in the off-season. And one I've been thinking about recently is Denver Granger Barras at Hawthorn, who's not getting a game, WA boy. We desperately need sort of a medium to tall defender. He, to me, seems like a good fit at the club. Jeremy Sharp, blah, blah, blah. Could we tempt Tim English with $1.3 million a year as a free agent? If it keeps going the way that it is, are players going to want to come to West Coast?
It's a good question. Yeah, we had this discussion before. Ultimately, money talks, but we won't be a club that overpays. But if we find like Nathan Broad, yeah, he'll come. Like, we're a good chance to get him. Apparently, like Richmond's not going anywhere by the looks of it. The era's changed now with Hardwick leaving. Yeah, Nathan Broad will still come because the money will stack up and that'll be fine. He's not at a club that's pushing for a premiership anymore, so why wouldn't he? Yeah, guys like English and Norden, who knows? I mean, if the Dogs are pushing for the flag in the next couple of years, then they may not, unless we offer crazy money, in which case, anyone's head is turned when it's that situation. Young guys who aren't getting opportunities, well, why wouldn't they? Devin Robertson, Granger Barras, yep. If they're going to get games, then they may as well. So I think I'm pretty calm in that sense. Then the conversation turns to the draft, and are there going to be Victorian players who say, no, I don't want to go to the Eagles because of where they're at right now? And of course, the number one talking point is Harley Reid. And whether we get pick one. I'm not convinced we will get pick one. As bad as we're going right now, I think when the senior players come back at the end of the season, we could nab a couple of games late on and Hawthorn or North could still finish bottom. And that doesn't bother me too much, as good as Harley Reid might be. Like the whole tanking talk and that, I just, my stance in it. I think it's nonsense. I think a winning culture is far more important than a draft position. And I think we will trade the pick anyway. I think if we get pick 1, 2, or 3, we will be cashing that in. And if it is pick 1 with Harley Reid, I think we will trade it up for 3 first-rounders. So the conversation of whether he'll come to Perth or whatnot, I think is a moot point, because I can see us trading that pick with the Victorian club and getting 3 first-rounders for Harley Reid.
Yeah, I don't see a scenario that Harley Reid's at West Coast next season, as much as he potentially is a generational talent. I think Daniel Curtin, I think his name is, he's the most highly rated young West Aussie. Like, I think the Eagles will say, let's get the best West Aussie with our first pick, whether that's 3, 4, 5, and let's make sure we've got a couple in the gun to draft some quality youngsters, because there's a gap at the bottom of the list, for some young players, as we know. So at the moment, strength in numbers, if you want to get this rebuild going. So there's plenty of Victorian teams that will think, if there's a pick 1 up for grabs, how can we, get up there and grab it? Like St Kilda or Carlton are begging for a classy player like that to top up their list. So that's their opportunity to potentially get it. So I think we'll have plenty of options.
Yeah, I'm not sure we're as locked in on just WA players as people think. I've been told on pretty good authority that the Eagles wanted Ollie Hollands from Carlton with their second pick after Jinby. But he was nabbed at pick 11 by Carlton, so we took Elijah Hewitt, who we're happy with, of course. I think he'll be a really good player. But we would have taken Ollie Hollands, I understand, with our second pick at the draft, who's from the Murray Bush Rangers, but the Blues nabbed him. So, I don't think it's all WA as much as some people think we're inclined to be.
Do you think that was there a chance that Hewitt was going to slide? But then once he was,
I just think Hewitt was.
Yeah.
No, I think it was just the right pick at the time. Like, we've seen his talent; he's got plenty about him. Our midfield and moving forward, Jinby doing the grunt work, Elijah Hewitt is the Tim Kelly type, providing the cream on top. Yep. Pushing forward, it's looking really encouraging in that sense for the future. But we've got a long way to go, of course. But I don't know. But we've seen enough from Elijah to think that he'll be a good player for us. It's just got a lot of work to do in the draft. Like, we're going to have, I reckon, 5 or 6 picks inside again, the top 30, you would think, based on what we'll do with our first pick and the likelihood that we'll trade it up.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting period for us if we do have a crack at Nathan Broad. I didn't realise he was 30.
Did you really?
I didn't do the research required. I just, in my head, Nathan Broad is not 30. He's like 27. Yeah. It's because he was a later starter. He was a mature age pick from Swan Districts, but he's still a great player. So forget the 30 thing. We could offer him a 4-year contract and, he gets a payday and we get a really good soldier for 4 years, because the weekend was a great example of why we need it. Having Broad and Barrass out there and McGovern, it's a completely different game. So, forget about the age. At the moment, the Eagles just need good players who want to be there. So, and you got to pay someone too.
Yeah, and also, like, just because you're bringing in a 30-year-old doesn't mean that you're being arrogant about where your list is. You can bring on young players and rebuild by still having some experience there, and we need a little bit more of it. So, no issues there.
If we ended
up to scale all the way back.
If we ended up with Granger Barrass, let's say, and Broad also came to the club, like, could you think of someone better for Granger Barrass to learn off? Premiership player from Richmond who just shut down Jeremy Cameron.
Yeah,
that's a good situation for everyone. So. No, it's it'll be interesting to see what we do. But clearly, as we've discussed, the list needs a massive turnover, and that's probably an extended conversation for another podcast.
Yeah.
What have you made of the just quickly the last couple of the last week or so, we've had Alistair Clarkson step away and Damien Hardwick quit. Do you think that has any effect on Adam Simpson?
I think the Hardwick one, I mean, Clarkson was a very different situation, as we know. I think the Hardwick situation, would make Simmo reflect and check in with himself and his family. Like, is this good for me? Is this good for us? Do we need this? Definitely. I think when you see one of your compatriots doing something like that, yep, no doubt. And I wouldn't be surprised if Adam Simpson and Damien Hardwick spoke, like, talk to me about your decision because, I'm going through a tough time at the moment. It would definitely provide a moment for reflection. And he should be thinking about that stuff. But if he is and he comes to the conclusion that he is just so driven and has so much to give, well, then great.
Yeah. We're just counting down here, Garby, but we put out the tweet yesterday to ask some questions of the fans.
Let's rip through a few.
Yeah. Alex Paul who's done some writing for us and is an avid listener. How many clubs have a CEO's son employed in a recruiting role? Gavin Bell gets a promotion because of internal reasons, a lack of direction from the top down, chairman failing to stamp any authority, CEO being there too long, no evidence of a succession plan or future thinking, a rudderless club. Is that fair?
Yeah, that is all fair. Definitely is. All those positions should be reviewed. I mean, we've been saying it for 2 years that, and my whole overriding opinion is that the Eagles got complacent after 2018. The club had a healthy arrogance prior to that, where they knew they were a trend-setting club, and I reckon they surprised themselves with the 2018 flag, and they thought they were invincible, and the arrogance became unhealthy, and they stopped innovating for a moment. And if you do that in the AFL for 5 seconds, you get swept past. And now they're trying to play catch-up, but it's hard to do that with all the injuries. You've got to ask questions about people in those positions. Have they been too loyal, and are they the right people, and so on? It's definitely fair to question that. I'm not sure it's definitely the case, but it's fair to question it. And there's absolutely no doubt the club became complacent. No doubt. And they're trying now. I think they've realised that, but it's very hard to prove that when you've got so many players out.
Greg Mullen says scrutiny needs to go on Rowan O'Brien, who's our recruiting and list manager. List is an absolute debacle. Nick Nat 2-year deal is a disaster. McGovern deal for 2 years might be as well. Club not announcing the latter's injury for fear of fan blowback about re-signing another injury-prone senior player. And that's in reference to Nick Nat and his Achilles. Does Rowan O'Brien deserve the blowtorch?
When it comes to recruiting in terms of the draft, I'm not too sure just yet because we haven't seen enough of these kids. And as we said, a lot of them are playing underdone at the moment. So I'm not sure about that. The list management, everyone's involved in that. It's not just Ron O'Brien. The coach is involved. Don't tell me a coach isn't involved. The coach picks who plays on the weekend. Like the coach judges whether you can go for a flag or not. It's everyone. It's not just Ron O'Brien. That's Adam Simpson. That's Trevor Nisbet. That's assistant coach. No, they're all in on that, on where the list is. So you can't put all the blame on him. That's not fair.
Yeah. Ash says, take a deep breath. Some of the reactions from supporters have been ridiculous. Expectations way out of whack with the team that we're putting on the park. Clearly some efforts aren't good enough. Hard to stay motivated 100% of the time in current environment. There's a pretty level-headed response, which we like. And Ash says, as for Simmo, he might not be the right man for this build, but calling for him to be sacked now is absurd. Coach isn't the biggest issue and change will make zero difference. Keep turning the list over and things will turn. And he says, pick one. I don't think we'll do that. So just quickly, Jared Waitley, I respect his point of view on football. He said, if Simpson does go, then the Eagles need to get he called it sort of a Western Australian favourite son to take the Eagles forward. So he suggested Jamie Graham. You could probably throw Don Pike and Dean Cox into that mix as well. Do you think that would be, is that feasible going forward if Simmo decides that he doesn't want to take the team to the depths of the rebuild?
Yeah, I mean, no one knows how good Jamie Graham is. Could he be the next Craig McRae? Maybe. Is he not cut out for it when he gets put in the hot seat? We don't know. Don Pike, has to figure prominently. Former Eagle, experienced coach, would have learnt a lot at the Swans at the moment. Not sure Dean Cox is head coach material personally, but maybe he'll surprise us. Obviously, got a lot of respect from everyone there. Nathan Buckley's a name I think that should be thrown up, Drewy. I've always been a fan of Nathan Buckley, and I know he's enjoying life at the moment in the media and maybe doesn't want to get back into coaching. But if there is an itch there that he wants to scratch, you've got to ask that conversation because, fresh eyes from outside. Let's not forget he was a kick away from winning a premiership and did really well with Collingwood and then stepped away when he was burnt out. Yeah, he's definitely someone that should be looked at. Thoughts on him?
I think that Bucks should conduct or head up the review into the football department if we do one.
Yeah.
And I would like to see him. He won't move to WA, is my view, because he wants to spend as much time as he can with his sons. But if he could do a sort of what would you call it? An overseeing kind of mentorship role where he spends some time in Perth and some time in Victoria and is a West Coast employee, I think that would be a great move because he's one of the best minds in football. So I would love to see him a part of our club. But you won't be able to get into WA full-time is my view.
Yeah, fair enough. A good question from Jonah Bell. Tough one on short notice, though. What's the biggest sliding doors moment from the past 3 seasons?
Is the Tom Barrass drop mark in the back line against Hawthorn, is that 3 seasons ago? If we finish top 4 and win that flag, Simmo is a 2-time premiership coach and who knows where life's at.
Yeah, look, I don't think we're winning a flag after 2018 because of my opinion that we were just not quite driven or hungry enough. So for me, the Tim Kelly trade, I don't blame us for it, but we weren't positioned to do that because we weren't innovating enough off the field at the time. I think we just stood still a bit off the field, and so we weren't ready to catch. Sliding doors moment is after 2018, just getting too comfortable and not saying, all right, we're going to be the hunted now. We've got this flag. What do we do to stay on top of things? Shake up the list a little bit, move a couple of senior players on just to keep the players on their toes. That's the sliding doors moment for me. Maybe
it's Craig Vozzo losing whatever power struggle he was having at the club and leaving.
Yeah.
Just FYI on Tim
anyway,
Kelly,
Drewy.
Two of the players that they got with those draft picks are Cooper Stevens and Jeremy Sharp, who can't get a game at their current clubs. And Kelly's one of our best right
Interesting.
Now. Anyway, Garby, thanks for this.
Yeah, no issues with him. Thanks, Drewy.
Take care.
Let's go hope for something special against the Bombers, unlikely as it may be.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.